Hello, everybody. Welcome to Laser Brains. This is the podcast that reviews every good movie ever made. I'm your co-host, Mike Allen. As always, I'm joined by
Joshua Mervell, and today we're going to be talking about Die Unglück Geschenk. It's a 1984 German film.
Gesundheit.
That's right.
Thank you.
I've heard of it. And as always, we're joined by Champion.
Guten Tag.
Okay. Thanks for hosting Movie Night every Wednesday.
Anytime. It's always good to come and be emotionally scarred
By an international film.
by international
films.
films.
Oh yeah, there was tears tonight. But also we have a special guest tonight. First time ever guesting on a podcast he's never watched before. Ryan Hughes. Thank you for joining us.
Shiza, thanks for having me.
Hey, language.
It's okay. I don't think any of our other guests have seen our
That's true.
podcast either.
They come on and
it's fine.
They still don't watch it after they're on our show. That's okay. By the way, I love that sweater thing you have on there. That's awesome.
Well, I wanted to take tonight seriously, so I found the most grown-up thing in my closet.
Right.
That's great.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay.
Star Wars is also a never-ending story lately.
Well,
Yeah.
I thought I was here to watch Star Wars today. I was like, what
tricked you.
is this nonsense
Yeah.
about some...
So here's the
fantasy.
thing. What we like to do with a nostalgia movie like this is talk about our first experience with it, right? Okay, so I think I'm the oldest here. Ryan, how old are you?
almost 43?
Okay, so I'm definitely the oldest then. And then Ian's number 2.
That's me, yeah.
I'm just going to say I watched this movie infinite times as a kid to the point that when I watched it tonight, I was almost memorized. Like when lines came up, like I knew what was going to happen next. Like, math test. Oh no. Like little things like that. I'm like, I know what's going to happen next. So that was me. And I have to give a shout out to my next door neighbors, Brett and Chris Reno, because I know I watched it at your house many, many, many times with my brother Sean. Anyway, Ian, what's your experience with this film?
I saw this film right around the time that it came out. I was in grade 1 or grade 2 at Kingsville Public School.
Okay.
And we were all, for whatever reason, ushered down into the basement, and we just sat and watched this. We all sat on the floor and watched NeverEnding Story on one of
maybe
those.
it was a stormy day or something?
It
or-
might have been. It might
Yeah.
have been. It could have been. But yeah, just they wheeled in the cart with the TV and the top load VCR, and ka-chunk,
Yep.
devastated us all. And I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it since. It was
Oh my
that time,
God.
and then it was this time.
Wow. Okay, Ryan, let's hear your story.
Same probably. Maybe not childhood, but maybe as a teen. Definitely seen it a handful of times. But like I said, gearing up for tonight, I'm like, should I watch it again in preparation for this and make myself familiar with it again? But it did. It's funny because watching it again now, kind of as an adult, it's not like I have kids. We've grown up watching it. But seeing it again now, it is like, it's blowing my mind because it's not, I got right past the cheesy special effects, whatever's right away. And it brought me back to childhood VHS. Like I know I had this on VHS.
Sure.
And I don't know, like the emotions, the complexity, like it was way more than I expected. I'm like, oh yeah, cheesy 80s movie again. But no, it was wild.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
with you on that. Josh, how about you?
Yeah, I've seen this movie a lot as a kid. I actually didn't have the VHS myself. My grandparents did, and it was the old like cardboard sleeve, not the clamshell.
Oh, okay.
And I watched that probably every time I went over to their house.
Yep.
And it was like a
One of
staple
those
as a kid.
movies, yeah.
And this movie actually is like part of the reason why I really got into reading as a kid too, because I found out that
movie's
this was
working.
an actual book. It's not just the movie. So
Did you read
as
the book?
Yeah, as a kid,
Okay.
I read it, and
We're going
it's
to talk about that
the
later.
English
for
version?
Sure.
yeah, the English version. Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. Well, okay, so this movie, everyone's seen this movie, but we're just going to say that the main hook of this movie is that it's a movie about, okay, first it's a book
Yeah.
about a kid who reads a book and kind of interacts with the characters in the book and the story. And in this movie, it's an adaptation of that. So they do their best to dramatize, a kid reading a book who realizes that the characters know that he's reading the book and he can kind of interact with the story as the story goes on. And we're not going to spoil it what the plot is, but it's awesome. And it goes from there. All kinds of wild characters, right? Like, and okay, I'm just going to give my first impression of watching it tonight for the first time in many, 20 years, 25, 30 years. is that it holds up just as well as I remember it. I think it's funny because you mentioned the cheesy special effects. I actually think the special effects, except for one green screen shot, I think all the special effects are great. I think the puppets are great. I think the statues that he has to go through are great. The space, like how they're in space, but there's still good lighting, and the stars are brighter than they would be naturally. I think the special effects
That's what
are
I mean.
amazing.
Like the movie, like knowing that you're coming in to watch an 80s fantasy, whatever film, children, family friendly, G rating, I'm assuming.
Yeah, whatever, PG,
probably.
probably.
Yeah. But no, it was like, it's like I'm thinking and picturing that. I'm like, oh man, this came about the same time as Return of the Jedi. So you're in that era of
Sure.
special
Yeah.
effects. The outer space thing was kind of cool because there's, so many films that like introduced kids like us to space and whatever, and you get to see it and experience it. But like you said, you're right. It's not super cheese, and it's period correct. I also put myself in the shoes of the Gen Z, the Gen Alpha, the whatever's, when they're like, how many kids have we seen mocking things like Crake windows or rotary telephones, and you have them sit down and watch a film like, so like, this is the worst, dumbest special effects ever. You're like, no, 1984, this was cutting edge. This was
Yeah,
the
100%.
shiz. Like, this was the greatest crap ever. So
Yeah.
it was like the cheesy crap, the cheesy special effects kind of thing left after 5-10 minutes of the film. I just got right back into it like I was a kid again.
Absorbed.
Yeah.
You're in that world. Ian, what did you think watching it after all these decades?
Well, it's clearly a film for children.
Yeah.
When it comes to the plot and the story and the characters and the dialogue, everything is dead simple. Everything is explained very, very carefully to us. And I had to take a second to sort of step back and not judge it based on that, because like people of our age is not this film's target audience.
Right.
Despite the fact that there's all this death and horrible sadness. This is a movie that was written for 8-year-olds. So I watched it more as we're going right back to the special effects. It was a special effects tour de force.
Yes,
I
tour
think.
de force.
It was a masterpiece. The puppetry was spectacular.
Mm-hmm.
The matte paintings were like,
Unbelievable.
half the time I couldn't tell
Yeah.
like if I was looking at something real or something not, but like no, this doesn't exist in the real world. So
Right.
somebody spent so much time on these things.
The blending of like real and matte paintings too it was like particularly great in this movie. There's one shot where Atreyu is riding off in this field, and it's clearly like a matte painting way in the distance, but there's matte foreground elements that he like rides through, and still in my head I'm like, how did they do this without like painstakingly like cutting that over top of every
Probably
film?
what they
like
did.
yeah,
Painstakingly cutting over
like
the top.
it's just
and
nuts.
to speak to your point there was a scene, and maybe you picked up on that too, where they just did a straight shot, like when Atreyu first started off on his mission and he's riding through a grassland or something, and all of a sudden it's just a straight camera shot
Sure.
where he's riding through grassland and there's no special effects at all, and it looked lame, right? Like that
Interesting,
that
yeah.
one shot where all of a sudden we're in the real world and the special effects aren't in play anymore. It just, oh, this is boring.
Well, it didn't look.
Let's bring back the fantastic.
I would say the word plain, not lame.
well,
but I know what you mean.
Whatever,
Like, it
whatever
looked-
you want to
it looked-
call it. Like
yeah, it looked like.
they did such a good job with
Yeah.
building this world that when we were momentarily brought back to what was
Reality.
our world, it looked very lackluster.
Yeah, I know what you mean. And the funny thing is that even like in the first 20 minutes of the movie, there's no special effects. But I took notice of the cinematography. It was excellent. Like every shot, the lighting, like even just the opening shot when he sits down for breakfast and he's in his father's in the background.
It's like a long,
Yeah, it's a long take.
shot.
But I'm like, no, the
It's
lighting,
crazy,
the lighting's
yeah.
great. The blocking's great. Everything's great. The dialogue's great. And again, Ian, you pointed out this is aimed at children, but we can still judge it from an adult, perspective of like, okay, you're a kid watching this movie, and the father is like, I'm disappointed in you. You didn't do your homework.
Yeah.
You were late for class, right? And it's like you're watching this, going, this is how you do it. This is how you make a good movie for kids.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
he goes to school and he gets bullied. and then he's late for class again, and then he's escaping the bullies, and he accidentally ends up in this bookstore with this curmudgeonly old man, and he gets this book, and it's like
So many of these things that have become tropes since
right,
because
right,
of
right, right,
Yeah.
100%. And it's just you're watching this, and oh god. And anyway, the point it's perfect. Like it's
Yeah.
so good. There's a reason we watched it 1,000 times as a kid. I think.
Oh,
right?
for sure, yeah. I remember as a kid being like obsessed with it. I loved this movie, and then I revisited this movie as a teenager, and I remember kind of like what you were saying with like kids, like nowadays seeing like it was whatever, and I feel like it kind of like tainted my memory of it a little bit. So when I sat down to watch it here today, I was like, I'm going to enjoy it and have a lot of fun, but
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to be as great as I remembered as a kid. And
Right.
I felt like it exceeded my expectations watching it again this time.
Well, we also had some members of the audience, Roman and Ina, who are very disparaging of our movie choices.
Really?
Because
Yeah.
we're always like, when are you going to watch a new movie? When are you going to watch movies from the 2000s? And I'm like, well, first of all, no one cares about those
You said
movies.
get out.
Yeah, like get. But then when the movie was done, I said, "What'd you think?" They said, "Oh, we thought it was great. They loved it. Of course they did.
Yeah.
It's a great movie, right?"
Yeah.
I feel like that's part of why I love coming here to see these films. It's more than just the nostalgia factor for our demographic. It's like, oh, we all grew up on this. We watched it 10 times, 50 times.
Right.
I think there's way more to it than that. There's always these niche little whether it's cars or movies or books that we grew up with. Everyone's got their favorite. This is the classic. This is the best. This is the bar that everything's measured by. I think what this captured too is that 80s, that magical sense of imagination. Like, I mean, the film is revolves around fantasy and imagination and dreaming, but I don't think any other decade hits on that the way the 80s did. Like, there's just nothing like that. Not
listen,
even close.
Yeah.
I've realized this as I get older is that, like, for example, Tarantino, he'll be like, "Oh, the 80s sucked for movies, man. 70s was the best." Well, maybe for action movies and exploitation movies and grindhouse, but family movies and
Yeah.
fantasy and science fiction,
Objectively, yeah.
right?
Yeah, that
Like,
content, the 80s crushed it, and everyone goes back to that. That's why it's Stranger Things. That's why
Yes.
it was so successful. That's why it gained such a mass following. People of all ages and all demographics, is because it strikes that 80s, that magical, whether it's fantasy, horror,
Yeah.
whatever. It just nailed it.
And right now we're kind of stuck in this like nostalgia era of movie making where everything has to be like a remake or a sequel, and it's all of these movies from the 80s, right?
I
like
mean-
it's we keep tapping into that because that's what we're remembering.
And the thing
cinema and
like
fantasy to be, right?
I love 70s cinema for like Taxi Driver, Network, and Godfather and Apocalypse Now. But you're not going to make nostalgia for, let's do Apocalypse Now
Yeah,
again.
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, no one's
I
going to
don't
do
feel
that.
good after
Yeah, let's
it.
feel good.
Yeah.
Yeah. No one's going to do that. But like, starting with, I guess, Spielberg and Lucas, Jaws, Star Wars, onto E.T., onto everything else. And then you have this decade of movies. Like, we're going to watch The Last Starfighter, right? We talked about Crawl earlier.
Yeah.
Crawl. Not even a good movie, but still, you should watch it. But like these movies where it was like, I kind of have to give credit to Lucas, who smashed together fantasy and science fiction.
Yeah.
And then after that, everything just went crazy.
I think that a lot of this has to do, like a lot of what happened in the 80s has to do with special effects, again, to go back to that.
Yeah.
The technological advancements that started to happen very rapidly at the end of the 70s. It allowed people to do a lot more things that they couldn't do before. And that resulted in people like George Lucas who, hey, let's do these mashups because we can create this imagery with
Right.
technology now. And people would just explore. This is a new technology. Let's see what we can make with this.
Yeah.
And we'll try things we've never tried before. And sometimes it'll work, sometimes it won't. But the stuff that really hit.
Yeah, and it still looks good today, I think, right?
Yeah.
Because it was the beginning of this stuff looking convincing.
Right.
And even when it's not like the best or totally convincing, I think that you kind of throw that out the window when it's like a tangible, real thing that the characters are interacting with, right? Like, it doesn't matter how believable CGI can be if it's not if you can't sell it or there's no like heart or character in it, it doesn't work. And like Falcor, I feel like is maybe
wait. We
Okay.
should say okay.
No spoilers. No spoilers.
Let's talk about the characters. Let's talk
okay.
about the characters, but let's save Falcor. Do you have
Okay.
a list of the characters? Because
Yeah, sure.
when we go into Fantasia, we are first introduced to a few characters. Okay. There's the guy.
The Texan with the
Conehead?
weird hat.
Yeah. That guy.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
He's a
yeah.
okay, he's
I see
regular
what you're
actor.
saying.
He's
Yeah,
cool. But he has the snail.
the
Oh
sorcerer
no,
guy.
no, the
yeah.
Teeny Weenie's his name. I looked it up.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
of the
But
te-
and we all know
No
who he
research
is
on
and
this
where he's from.
podcast.
no.
Just shortly.
Who is
after.
he?
Teeny Weenie's also the Oompa Loompa from Willy Wonka.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. That makes
yeah,
perfect
yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
Okay, and he
Which
has
is
this-
funny that they named him Teeny Weenie.
Yeah, but he has the racing
him.
snail thing.
Yeah, he's the guy that jockeys
Yeah.
the racing
Okay,
snail.
again, not for 1 millisecond did I question whether that was a real snail. I'm like, that's a giant snail.
That's a giant snail.
I don't question
A
it.
racing snail.
Yeah,
specifically.
a racing snail.
And then there's Night Hob, which
What-
is like the hobgoblin guy that with the bat.
Great makeup, right? Totally fine. Then there's the bat that hangs upside down.
Yeah.
He flies a lazy bat.
Again, you don't question it.
Sleeping while he's flying.
Yep. And then in the middle of a scene, the rock monster comes.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible. I'm not kidding. The lighting on the rock monster's face is nobody on earth could do it better, right?
And
Like,
Rockfighter is
seriously.
like the way that they blended that too. That's like a small costume, right?
Yeah,
like
so it's like a
it's like a
Force
Godzilla.
perspective?
It's a Godzilla type of like
shit.
size, and then they composite those two scenes
Amazing.
shot separately together, and it works so well. And I think a lot of that has to do with like the pre-planning and the staging of everything, and like the fact that the bite, like everything he's like biting
Yes.
is like falling down, and they have that like with the characters falling, like it just
It creates
feels so
connection between the
natural.
shots.
Yeah,
Yeah, I know.
yeah, it's great.
It's
When,
great.
when he first rolled up on his giant tricycle,
His
I
Flintstone tries to-
I was
Yeah.
I was sure, I was certain that we were going to see some really weird compositing, and it was going to
Oh.
yank me right out of it. But it didn't happen.
No.
And that almost yanked me out of it even harder. I was like, I was not expecting this to look as good as it did.
Yeah,
Right.
I was worried they're all going to run over. I was. I was.
Oh,
thinking
yeah,
that.
I was too. I was like, what's gonna happen? Oh my god, they're all gonna die.
I mean, even the way that it stops is feels so like real
Yeah.
and believable.
Yeah.
Like it has
Yeah.
this like, vroom, and
Yeah.
it like jerks forward
Yeah.
and like you can
like
feel the weight.
realistic
of it. Yeah.
physics, large
Crazy.
objects
Yeah.
feeling large, not just
You
looking
know what that
large.
scene was in my brain while I'm watching that again, take me back to being a kid again. But that was if they took the Iron Giant and mix it with the tree ants from Lord of the Rings,
Yeah, yeah.
and
Yes,
then
yes.
set them in Fraggle Rock, and that's
Yeah.
You know,
That's
it's
what that
all
was.
connected. It's all connected. Trust me. Yeah, I hear
Circular.
you. I hear
Feel the
you.
flow.
And there's also a little bit of. Do you remember in Humanoids, the cartoon?
Yep.
Remember the redwoods, the talking trees? Oh my God, it's all connected. It's the '80s, man. It's all the '80s. Anyway, okay.
Magic.
So who else we got? Ben.
Those are the three characters we kind of get introduced to at the
Okay.
start, and then we go to the White Castle,
Crystal Palace?
not White Castle.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, the white cat. Oh, but okay, I have to cut in for a minute. Okay, look, I like fantasy, I like science fiction, but most modern fantasies, there's something about them that doesn't click for me. When I saw that scene, when they're in this weird castle thing, and again, it's like the sky doesn't quite, it's not reality, and the background's not reality, but it's magical. And then they have all these characters around, those freaking big-headed guys.
Yeah,
remember?
that's what Conehead.
Oh
yeah.
my
Didn't they
God.
walk into a clam this big and then it was a giant room? It was like TARDIS.
Yeah.
That palace, the room they walked in was like a TARDIS.
Really?
Yeah,
It
when they
was
were
like
zooming
big
into
on
the city, it was like
I didn't notice that. Okay. But
That's how I
That's
got.
the shit I love. And then the guy comes out, the whatever he is, the wise guy, the wise man.
Hey, wise
Oh,
guy.
The wise guy. But it's just, I love it all. And the fact that they build up Atreyu, and this kid comes out,
Yeah.
and he's like, no, we don't want Atreyu the boy. We want Atreyu the hero, or whatever, the warrior.
Yeah.
The
He's like,
warrior.
no, I'm the only Atreyu. That was great. I love that shit, right?
Yeah, you don't want a kid? All right.
All right, then I'm going to go
Yeah.
back
Back
to
to hunting
hunting
the purple
buffalo
buffalo.
or whatever.
He sucker.
And you know what, too? like kind of stepping away from that, our real main character is Bastion, and I think that that introduction of Atreyu connects him so well to Bastion, and then also the audience. Like, we don't really get any backstory for Atreyu at all. Like, he doesn't have any character development. He doesn't really do anything the whole.
He's just kind of a big deal.
But yeah, but like because we have Bastion and we know a lot about him at this point, we kind of know everything we need to know about Atreyu. Like he's kind of like both our view into the story and his.
Yeah, 100%.
You know, it's
uninflected. He's our fiction. Grant Morrison calls it a fiction suit. He's our fiction suit in the story.
I like that.
Yeah, it's really cool. Yeah. And that's our way. It's his way and it's our way. It's perfect, right?
Yeah.
And then so then who's our next character? What's his name? What's the name of his horse?
Artax. It's not etched into your brain.
No,
oh my god, it haunts me. I could still hear it.
Okay, I think someone's gonna have to mop up the floor of Meteor for all the tears that were shed tonight. Because no one can watch that scene without crying their eyes out. It's so well done, right?
Yeah.
It's so well done. Just okay, first of all, I have to point out the editing in this film is exquisite. There's a lot of cutting back and forth in like an unorthodox way, and when the horse is sinking, there's close-ups of it going down, and that gives the, like, obviously you know that it's an actor, it's an acting horse. The horse is not really in danger, but like they use just the right moments of like the horse kind of looking like it's in danger, and then the kid pulling, and then the cut to the shot of the horse going down, and it's done in just the right way, and then it dissolves, and the kid's just standing there, and the horse is gone.
And
and a couple little bubbles.
The last bubble. You
God.
know when the bubbles are gone, that's it.
Yeah.
Fade to black.
And watching it again, like the second I see the Swamps of Sadness, my stomach just starts turning.
I think it adds an extra dimension to it. Not only did the horse sink, the horse sank because it gave in to the despair of the sadness. Oh my God, right?
And like at this point too, we barely know Atreyu.
Right.
We don't really even know the horse's name.
Good point.
They're walking through this swamp and then he dies. And there's something so powerful about it where we don't even have this connection with this horse, but it still is so painful.
That's
like
interesting. That's interesting.
I noticed that. It was very soon after.
It was. I was thinking, oh, this is too soon. Because I was not expecting it to be like, oh, here's Atreyu and Artax. Oh, here they are in the swamp where I know this happens.
Yeah, I know.
10 seconds later. And I'm thinking to myself, this isn't going to work.
Yeah.
This isn't going to work. Why is everyone going to say this is... Why is everyone saying this is so sad?
Right.
We don't know anything about this horse. We're not emotionally invested. And I'm just sitting there watching it like, yeah, all right, yeah, he's thinking, okay, this is when it's happening. I guess it's kind of dumb. This is not going to affect me.
No,
emotionally at all.
It starts with anger. The scene starts with anger. A, we've already seen it. B, you're like the swamp of sadness. Really, guys? Really? You're exhausted. You know just now you found out you got to travel 10,000 miles.
Yeah.
Let's start out in the swamp of sadness, for God's sake. Like, come on. You know it's coming. And then from having watched other fantastic films like Indiana Jones and whatnot, you're like, where's the vine? Someone grab a vine. For God, like, you want to get up from the table and say, grab a vine. They always grab the vine. And then immediately it turns to sadness and despair.
There's no saving you. The's no saving you. Oh, I love it.
But at this point, it's like, it's not... I've only seen this movie once, and I don't remember seeing it because I was 4.
Right.
Or how old I was. This is not nostalgia sadness for me.
No,
this is me looking at the scene.
This is real.
Basically for the first time, and me kind of like, this ain't going to work. It worked. It worked.
Just don't picture your dog.
Yep.
And a lot of that has to do with the actor who played Atreyu.
For sure.
I agree.
My God.
Yep. He was great.
Yeah.
He was great.
Yeah, and I think too, like, just the connection between, like, he does such a great job of like making it so believable that like his pet, he can't do anything to save his pet.
Yes.
And like
he sells
I feel like everybody kind of has that like feeling of dread at some point in their lives when they have like an animal that is like not well or you know like saying having to say goodbye to something like that is it's
That's why it's so horrible.
That's why I said you can't picture your own pet in that scene.
Yeah.
You'll straight up just start crying.
yeah.
Okay, so back to the movie. So then, very soon, what's the next scene? He meet is that
The turtle, the
the grumpy turtle.
Goodness.
yeah.
Okay, so obviously this movie has subtext, and I just interpret that as like he's trying to recruit help, but there's like an indifference from a certain type of person that comes right with this turtle. Like, I don't really care what's going on. I don't give a shit and whatever. I don't know.
I don't even care if I care.
Yeah, that's a great line. I don't even care if I care. Oh my god, that was so good. But again, the turtle, the effects, perfect, right? Like flawless puppetry, flawless lighting, the eyeballs like retracting in the nose when he sneezes the 3 times. It's so well done.
That wide, sorry to interrupt,
Yeah.
but that wide shot where you see the entirety of the turtle's shell and his neck sticking way out across the frame, and little tiny Atreyu standing on a tree.
Yep.
That's really the only
Amazing.
scene you see them in the same shot together too, and it like
That's all you need.
when you have a close up of this giant turtle, it feels like a giant turtle. And I know they didn't build it to scale. It's obviously this like smaller size that they make you believe that it's gigantic, and it's like you're not thinking about it in the movie. Like it works.
It's just a giant turtle.
Yeah, it totally works. And then and then what's the next after that? Then he goes. Then he meets the little goblin guy, right?
Yeah. Oh, well, Falcor saves him.
Oh yeah, Falcor
from the swamp.
Wait.
Okay.
We have to talk about Falcor
Sure.
because Ian and I laughed the one part where he says, "What does he say?" He goes,
I love children or something.
No. Okay, there's that. No. But
Not creepy at all.
But he talks about
Not to
something,
eat.
and he goes, "You talk in your sleep," and he winks at him.
Oh, yeah.
What the hell is happening? Oh, and by the way, can you rub my ear? Okay, whoa, slow down, back up. I don't know you that well. So yeah, I try not to like analyze kids' movies too much, but that was a little weird. What'd you think, Ryan? What'd you think?
Absolutely. The first thing that's crossed my mind was like, really? Like I don't know what order it occurred, but the line about I love children and then you talk in your sleep, wink, wink.
Yeah.
And then, get me right here. Oh yeah, I can't quite reach that spot.
And then when he does throws here, he's like, oh. And like everyone in the bar was like,
Oh
what
my
the fuck
goodness.
what the hell is going on here?
What are we watching?
Yeah, exactly. But okay, we'll forgive
Hope
it.
there's no boobs in
It
this
was a
movie
German
later.
film, so it's a
Yeah,
little
it was.
awkward.
It's a whole different world there. So yeah, we'll forgive it.
Yeah,
but-
and I feel like too, Falcor is the one puppet that doesn't stand up as
Okay.
much as everything else in this movie.
specifically because of his mouth.
Yeah.
does not match what he's
Like
saying
at all, and yeah.
I was gonna say, if anything about not fitting in is when they find the nothing, the void. It's clearly like some sort of plastic dragon toy from like the dollar store, and he was kind of twisting in the nothingness of the void. That scene there made me laugh. Like I almost burst out laughing. I was like, come on now. Like the puppetry that's more kiddie for me. That's more nostalgia. That's more like he's a dog dragon, for God's sakes. Like he's gonna look kind of silly, but that for me, that's very 80s childhood puppetry. Like you said, everything else was far more believable and realistic.
Sure.
He was kind of gimmicky and like
Okay.
Muppet kind
The
of.
Falcor animatronic was life size though, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I think so.
So there you go. It's when you're dealing with like a smaller, easier to articulate puppet compared to something that's enormous.
So it's harder to match up the words.
Harder to match up the words.
sure,
Harder to fight against the inertia of actually just moving things at all.
Yeah, I'm not like I don't care. I'm not criticizing. I'm just saying.
You're not going to flip the table over.
And
Yeah.
it's definitely not like the look of him because he looks amazing.
Yes.
And in stills, I think it works perfectly. I feel like if they changed it to where like he could talk to you like telepathically or something,
yeah.
and it wasn't like the mouth, I don't think that we would even be talking
Yeah,
about
like if he was
not
like
fitting.
a dog, like he barked or purred like a
like
cat.
the panting,
Or had they
like
built
the
a
ear-
second
like
smaller animatronic for the close-ups?
That's a good idea.
Yeah,
Yeah.
something.
I'll
But,
send that back into 1984.
Sure.
Telepathically.
Yeah. But then after that, then he meets the couple. Yeah.
Urkel and I can't remember. Wench.
Again, wench. No, I love
wench over and over.
I love that scene.
Shut up, wench.
It's a classic trope of like fairy tales of going through the gate.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Her name is Urkel.
Okay.
His is Engiwook.
Okay.
Before you go to the gate,
Naturally.
didn't they strike you as the couple from Princess
Princess
Bride?
Bride?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
I'm like, is that Billy Crystal?
Yeah.
100%. Yes.
Yeah.
Which if it would not surprise me if that's where the Princess Bride got it from.
100%.
Like,
Yeah.
let's just pluck this from here.
I totally agree.
Nobody's seen NeverEnding
But I
Story.
But they did it better. They did it better though.
I think so.
Years later.
But I love that whole scene of like the fact that they show the guy, the knight, getting killed, and then he's like, okay, well now I'm gonna go. I'm gonna try. That's like fucking scary.
Yeah.
Right?
And then when he's walking up, you see like the helmet fly back from the wind,
Yes.
and like
And you
it's
see
not
the
just a
corpse.
skeleton; it's like a
the
rotting,
Burned
yeah,
remains.
Burnt corpse that we
And-
watched this movie when we were 6.
Yeah, exactly.
At school.
Right?
At school,
Exactly.
we were the target audience.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, whatever.
We
hey.
didn't accidentally click the wrong
different
channel. It's
time.
like,
And not to be a child, but the boobs on the statue. I mean,
Okay.
I got to bring it up because
I
they
noticed
zoomed
that
in and
too.
focused so many times, and you got to think you're like, well, we know nudity is off the table in the 80s and 90s. Like, there's no question.
Yeah.
But it's like, but in a statue, it's art, and they're just going back and
Right.
forth.
But
And
okay,
I'm kind of.
not only were they very prominent boobs, there were nipples.
Yeah,
so
that's what I mean. It's full on.
So this was like, okay. It was a German director. I think it was filmed in Germany, right? It was filmed in Germany.
partially, some of it here in
So
Canada.
different standards. But I also have to point out, I'm watching this movie going, okay, from my 48-year-old brain in 2025, was there significance to the fact that there was boobs with nipples in
And-
my face? No, I'm only saying that because they're stressing that it's women. Is it supposed to be? Is there significance to that? Do you think?
No, I just think it's.
Is it like a goddess?
Yeah, I was gonna say
ancient
it
goddess
strikes
type
me as
thing?
like goddess, ancient, Egyptian, something or
Yeah.
other, something
Yeah.
that's the vibe we got.
they
but
look
just-
kind of
but-
like a sphinx.
But I
yeah.
laugh at that because, like you said, seconds before that, it's when they're watching through the telescope. It's literally just like laser beams.
Yeah,
Paladin,
yeah.
knight, golden armored guy dies. But like you said, when you're walking up to that and it's close up, it's like rotten, burnt flesh followed
Right.
by giant naked stone ladies
Right,
with their boobies
right,
out. So like that right there, that was that contrast to like we grew up okay. We're not screwed up.
Oh yeah, no,
Right?
I'm with you on that. I'm with you.
That
on
was normal.
Yeah. But anyway, I love that. And I think after that is where he goes.
That was the first gate. The second was the mirror thing.
Right.
Which they described and he made it sound like it was like the most
Yeah.
dangerous thing.
and then it was.
we watched the guy killed, and then we watched him barely get through, and then the much harder second one was like,
That's
I'm
where,
gonna walk through that.
that's where he saw the reflection of the kid, right?
Yeah,
Is that
he's
what you mean?
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
He saw the kid. He was meant to.
That
I
was
gotta
a
say,
really good scene.
I
though.
love that. Yep.
Not difficult though. That was the point.
Well, no, I mean, like,
Difficult at all.
not a difficult trial, but again, like, I'm not really judging the story based on
Like, what was the
its
point?
plot points.
Was the point of that he was the truest of heroes with a good heart, and then
Here's
the
the
child
thing.
wanted the best for.
I think this is where we have to ask Josh because you read the book.
Well, the book is very different.
Okay.
Yeah, the book it's similar and also like very different. It's also like only half of the book.
Really?
Yeah. Like the next half of the book is like him living in
I
Fantasia.
have to read this now.
And
I have to read
then-
this.
He like every wish that he makes to like bring people back, he like starts losing his mind. Like he loses like parts
losing-
of himself
He's
from his
losing touch
past
with
life.
reality, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then and it's like every wish, and then he's like purposely creating stories and like creating monsters to fight them and
Wow.
create better stories. And
Okay.
then at the end, he like has lost all memory of who he was, and he doesn't even remember his own name.
Again, perfect for a 5-year-old.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
No,
Well,
but-
the 7-year-old
it's
at that
very-
point.
Yeah,
but I do. Yeah, but I do
It's
want to
very
read this.
different. I assume that also it's probably a good thing to say the author of this book hated
Yes,
this movie.
I read that.
He even hated the script so much so that he tried to sue the production company to have them change the name of the movie before it came out
Mm-hmm.
because they're like, he was like, they changed so much that it's not even my story anymore, and I don't want to be associated with this movie.
Well,
So
here's the thing: is like for me, okay. The reason I asked about that is because the moment where he sees himself in the mirror, I'm just wondering how that would play out in the novel, because you've read the novel.
when I was a very
When you
young
were-
kid,
Yeah. So
Yeah.
you don't remember.
No.
but
No.
The point is that
Thanks, Josh.
Yeah, thanks for contributing.
All that to say, I don't know.
No, but yeah, I don't know. But in the movie, I thought it was really effective, but maybe it was a different feeling when you're reading the novel. But like in the movie, again, because I don't want to spoil any comic books, but I've read a comic book where that is like the climax of the comic book is the character meeting his author. And so in this movie, it was a similar feeling as like, wait a minute, what? So maybe we've seen it in other stories, but it's pretty effective the way it was shot.
Well, I assume that the mirror is a reflection of him, right? It's Bastion and
Sure.
Atreyu
That's
are
what I meant,
mirrors
yeah,
of
yeah.
each other,
Yes,
right?
yes,
So, and the scientist goblin even says like it's the hardest trial because you're having to face yourself. Like even the bravest people find out that they're not actually brave, or the strongest people are actually weak. So it's like facing your inner, like inner demons, kind of, right?
Right.
And the way that I
weaknesses.
read
Yeah.
that, like I kind of got the sense that they're both looking at each other at that point, like
Yeah.
Atreyu through the mirror and then Bastion through the book.
Right.
And while Atreyu was seeing this meek version of himself, essentially, Bastion was through the book seeing the Atreyu in himself.
Right.
Yes, yes.
And when
Good
when
point.
he's reading the book, he's they describe Atreyu first, and they only say that he's this great warrior and all of these like great things that he's done. And then he grabs his backpack, and he sees this Native American fighting buffaloes. And then he goes back to reading the book, and Atreyu steps up and he goes, "It's just a kid?" So the book is kind of he essentially made Atreyu look like that by reading it and imagining
Gotcha.
himself kind of through
Yes.
Atreyu, right? So he's
So-
like,
It's him as a superhero kind of.
yeah, and
Okay.
he's kind of like he's putting like faces to the words that are on the pages.
Okay, so to go back to how you said the author hated the movie, maybe they could have added something at the beginning of the movie where he's reading adventures of this Native American
Yeah.
warrior, blah, blah, blah. Because I think that was the only time we saw that character, when he looked at the backpack, right?
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
it would have been better if he was like, oh, this is the character I read, and then I'm going to graft that onto this fictional character in this book, right? That would have been better.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And it's also because he's completely fearless. And as a child, we see in the beginning he's bullied by the kids, thrown in the dumpster,
Right.
And he
Right.
just skips school entirely. Like when we just hide upstairs, away from the world. So that's the universe of that, right? So,
Yeah.
Right.
yeah.
Oh, okay. So then what happens next, Josh, in the plot? I don't remember. Then
So he finally makes it to like past the mirror thing.
Yep.
And then we find out that he needs to go all the way back to the ivory tower.
Is this the 10,000 miles thing?
No, this has already been done.
Oh, okay.
He needs to go back because they need to give
Now
the
he's trying to find
the
the
empress a new
Empress.
name.
Empress.
Yeah,
Oh yeah, the edge of the world kind of thing.
yeah.
I love it. Oh my God.
Because he needs to find the human child
Right.
that's been with him this entire adventure.
Amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And then this is where he sees, what is it called? Is this where
The
he
nothing?
sees the castle thing.
Oh, they're on their way, and then the nothing kind of takes over and
destroys everything.
Him and Falcor get separated, and he encounters the wolf.
Yeah. Oh, we forgot about the wolf.
Yeah,
Holy shit! Talk about scary. That wolf is going to be in my closet tonight when I go to try to go to sleep.
Absolute nightmare fuel.
Right?
yeah,
Yeah.
100%. Again, I think we'll agree if this was a CGI wolf,
Wouldn't have worked.
Yeah.
wouldn't work.
Wouldn't have worked.
It's because it's a puppet.
At
right?
the same time, they used the puppet appropriately. They didn't hit us over the head with it. The
Right.
first 90% of the movie, we see glimpses.
Just
we see his
eyes.
eyes in the darkness. We see him jumping out in a blur, but that's
Yep.
it. They don't let us see him until the end. And even when we do see him, he's in some sort of a clearing in the
Yeah.
woods or something. You can't see all of them. You can't get any sort of a sense of how big he might be, or it's just show us what you need to move the story along.
I assume the puppet itself was probably just the head too. Like there's you don't see
Yeah,
anything
yeah.
else, right? And then the only time you see the full body is after he's been killed,
Which
Right.
was a
And you kinda
little
see themselves.
anticlimactic, I think. Whereas
Yeah,
like I
it
said, this
was-
big battle, then he jumps out
That
and he
was
just
a-
kind of jumps into the.
I'll give you that.
The stone dagger, yeah.
Because they built it up like it was going to be this big challenge, but then all he's doing is just going like this, so for the wolf to jump into it.
He basically
You
fell
know-
back. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like for me, that's the thing throughout this movie that feels a little bit weak, is that we kind of get the feeling that these characters are going on this big adventure, but they don't really do anything on the adventure. Like we do
Yeah.
lose Artax, which is huge right at the beginning, and then he's kind of just walking through the swamp and he talks to a turtle and then he talks to a dragon and then he like walks down the desert.
Cheat
You know what
codes
I
through
mean?
10,000 miles.
Yeah, and
Oh,
like-
I'm only taking you
we're not
9,870
seeing him,
miles.
Like,
AB up,
do
down,
the
up, down.
adventure for most of the movie.
You know
I
what?
feel
Okay,
like.
you raised a good point, and I noticed that. I'm like, okay, oh my, because they set it up so well. When the turtle is like, it's 10,000 miles or whatever, and I remember even as a kid, the edit of the kid hearing it before he even finishes the sentence, and the kid just going,
And that,
Oh,
and when he says that,
10,000
that comes
miles.
after montage of the plains
Yes.
and the deserts
And
and
the
the,
ri- yes,
oceans and
you're right, you're
everything.
right.
Then it's 10,000 miles, and it's like, I'm gonna drown in the swamp. And then Falcor saves the day. He's like, just kidding.
yeah,
I'm gonna
yeah.
fly you 98% of the way.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. You're right. Is like, it's like it feels like a big challenge to overcome, but then it's fixed. It's solved in 2 seconds, and that's a weakness. I think
Yeah.
you're saying, right? Is
Yeah.
it like that in the book? Do you remember?
No, I
Okay,
don't.
He was
you don't remember
5.
The book. Okay. no, I don't blame
book
you. I don't
was
blame
read
you.
to
I
him.
was really young.
What was that?
The book was read to him.
Yeah,
By his German grandmother, yeah.
No, but it's like no, because I know you mean. It's like that was one weakness in the film is, and the thing is from the very beginning of the movie, one weakness is that every time we come into a scene, it's almost like the middle of the scene. It's like we're getting
Yeah.
fragments of everything, so it's almost like we're not quite feeling the struggle of,
Yeah.
of the adventure.
I feel like to the goal is a little bit gray throughout
Right.
the whole thing. Like he's like, you need to go talk to this person, and he goes and he talks to them, and she's like, you need to go talk to this person now, and it's just kind of like it feels a little intangible, like the
Yep.
thing that we're trying to
And
do.
throughout the journey, and it narrates, and the child's reading the book, and it's like he searched everywhere, and he just couldn't find the cure. It's like
Right,
he
yeah.
hasn't searched. What?
Yeah.
He's gone to these few places, and like, well, not there, not there.
Yeah.
There's no dots on a map. There's no.
Yeah,
Just like he's like, I've been everywhere.
Ah,
Eh,
yeah,
What can you do?
I guess there isn't a cure.
Yeah.
yeah,
So
exactly.
I feel like that's a one small thing that I'd maybe fix about
Sure,
this
I agree
movie.
with you on that.
But again, movie for young kids.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
You need to keep it as simple as possible.
Yeah.
You can't muddy.
Short attention spans.
You can't muddy the story up with things like plot points.
Well, I guess but the point is I think it works for. I think kids still love it, obviously, because we did. But I think you're saying it could be better. It could
Yeah.
be better. I
don't
think I agree.
I don't
yeah.
think it's an excuse for not having like a good story.
No,
Yeah.
I,
You know
I'm,
what I mean?
I'm
Like-
being kind. I'm being kind of silly about that
Yeah.
because there are so many kids movies nowadays that
Yeah.
have those undercurrents that are just for the
Right,
grown-ups
yeah.
that are watching them, and all this stuff goes over the kids' heads,
Right.
but the parents appreciate it.
And I think it's fine to kind of yada 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 your way through some of this, particularly in this movie, because it is kind of like being told to us through the kid reading, right? So I don't mind like some of the skips and stuff like that, but I just felt like the audience kind of knew what the goal was
Yeah.
a little bit more.
Yeah, I agree with
Yeah.
you. I agree with you. Okay, so then what happens next? Then it's the Empress.
Yeah, Falcor finds him again, flies him to the Empress, and then everything is kind of falling apart. There's nothing left but just like chunks of Fantasia.
And this is kind of a twist where this is where he realizes the human child is the reader,
Right.
which is awesome.
Yeah.
Which is cool. And then you have to say my name. You have to say my name.
Yeah, give me a new name, say
Give me
my
a new
name.
name.
And then Bastian in real life finally has the courage to fling open the windows and scream out, Moonchild.
Is that what he screamed?
Yeah.
Is it?
You see,
is
because
it really?
I couldn't
couldn't make it out.
hear
Neither
him.
could I.
Yeah.
But is that his mother's name?
I assume not.
I don't know, because the thing,
Moonchild?
the ghost of the story is that his mother died,
Right.
and then, like the father acknowledges it, and that's like the backstory. But we don't find out anything more about it. But we can only assume that's her name.
Well, he does. Bastian at some point does, when he first learns that that somebody needs to find a name. He sort of daydreams about, I wish I could
Yes.
use my mom's name.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah,
Because the
from-
perfect name.
From the
Yeah.
start of the film, he's dwelling on that. And his dad's like,
Yeah.
you need to get over it. You need to move past that.
Right.
You need to be a man. Like, stop
Right.
imagining things.
But
And that's what I thought it comes back to, full circle kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I also thought that's why I couldn't make the name out watching the film in real time. So I thought it was deliberately kind of muddled because he's screaming his mother's name.
Right.
And I
And
thought
there's,
that
there's no way that a woman named Moonchild would have ended up with that buttoned up suited guy. Like, there's no chance. No chance.
well, first of all,
Drinks his
guy
eggs in the morning.
Drinks his eggs with orange juice and tells his son, "Hey, quit following your dreams, son. Keep your feet on the ground
Right.
and go to school. You have a math
either
test."
she was a hippie or she was a Native American, right? Like Moonchild.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I have an accurate interpretation of how Native Americans name their children, but that sounds like a version of what could be a Native American name, right?
Who I
So-
still I couldn't see. ending
No,
up with a guy
not
like
with that
this,
guy.
right? Like,
By the way, we have to give credit. That's one of the guys from Simon and Simon. Shout out to Simon and Simon. Do you remember that show?
what?
It was
Oh no, I've never
a
seen, I
smash
don't think
hit
I've seen it.
TV show from the 80s called Simon and Simon, and this was one of the brothers. There were two brothers. This guy was like the crazy asshole guy, and the other guy was like the stuck-up guy that wore the suit.
So did he play Simon?
No, this guy was Simon. Yeah,
Okay.
the other one played Simon.
Oh,
Okay,
all right,
so anyway,
all right.
anyway.
I got him confused.
Okay, so back to the then they destroy the universe, and then everything blows apart. But,
Right.
but the temple is still there, right?
No, at this point,
Oh wait.
there's all that's left is a grain of sand.
Oh yes, the grain of sand.
Yeah.
Again, can I compliment the cinematography? Everything works. Everything's perfect. It just and then she's holding the grain of sand. I love it all. It's so good, right? It's like, what can you say?
Such a simple little shot too. It's just holding this
Yeah.
little point of light in first her hand and then in his. It looked completely convincing.
I agree. I agree.
And then he uses that to wish for Fantasia back. Everybody's back alive.
Okay, that's a little bit of a. It kind of ruins it a little bit. What do you think, Ryan? Because like now everyone's alive.
Yeah, I felt like Atreyu at that moment when they got to, like you said, the crystal tower is all that's left in outer space and nothing. And she's like, "Well, I just needed a name from the human child." And the guy's like, "That's it? You knew that the whole time? That's
Yeah.
why my horse died?"
Yeah,
Really?
exactly.
I was
right.
like, "Give it to her. You tell her.
Yeah,
This is nonsense."
right.
But then, yeah, like you said, it's one of those things where like all this drama, all this emotion, and then everything goes away, and then we come back, and it's one-on-one,
And
black
it's like,
background,
yeah,
nothingness,
all the guys are alive.
magic grain of sand, and the kid's like, "That's all I got to do? Take this grain of sand?" Boom.
Yeah.
Saved everything. And you're like, again, happy ending, everyone wins, but you're like, really?
Right.
Kind of like it's too slow fast. It's like it tells a story and then that's the result.
Yeah, it kind of undermines it. A little
I
bit.
think it. Go ahead.
Okay.
Sorry.
I think as a story, it does kind of undermine it. But the one thing I will say about bringing like Artax and characters like that back is it brings us right back to the beginning of the story, which
Yeah.
it is kind of this big loop essentially. That's
Sure.
what makes it the
Almost
never-ending
as though it never
story,
ends,
right? So when the next kid picks up this book
Sure.
and reads through it, they're going to be reading about Bastian in the never-ending story and like kind of going through that, right?
At the same time,
So-
though, I think that it would have been a little bit more on message for it to be more like, instead of Fantasia coming back the way that it was, for it to be a new Fantasia that was completely created from Bastian's imagination.
Yeah.
Like, create a Fantasia of your own. Our Fantasia is gone, but your Fantasia is just beginning. And here's the first grain of
Sure.
sand towards a new world that isn't exactly the same as the first one. But then again, in order to visually tell that, you've got to make a whole new set of puppets.
But Fantasia wasn't the Fantasia in the book. That was his Fantasia, was it not? Isn't that kind of the premise as well?
Well, that is that
because
is.
it's his imagination, it's his dreams. Because the creepy guy in the bookstore told him, he's like, this isn't just a story. Like, this isn't just you read it and you think you're there. He's like, you're there. So it was more than just Atreyu being kind of a mirror image of him or what he idolized and what he wanted to be.
Yeah.
I think that everything was his Fantasia. So saving it was saving his childhood, his imagination, his dreams.
And then nothing is him fighting, pushing that out and not believing and
him keeping his feet on the ground.
I think, I mean, it's kind of like we're talking about fantasy. So the question is, what's the best way to dramatize the idea? And I know what you're saying, Ian. It's like you have one way, you have another way. What's the better way for the audience? I kind of agree with you. It's like I felt cheated by the fact that everyone just came back to life. Like this sad scene of the horse is back. And then all the guys that died.
Yeah,
they're
I
back.
cried for that goddamn horse, and now you're here again.
So it's like, it does undermine it a little bit.
But I understand what you're saying, and I agree with you. I just don't think that that's necessarily the fact that it's Sebastian's story isn't necessarily conveyed at the beginning of the film. We find that out closer to the end. So it
less time machine, more imagination. Just grow from here.
Yes.
Build it better.
And also, like, there's nothing wrong with saying that we love this movie, but we could see how they could improve certain things, right?
yeah.
Right? But we all agree the puppets are great. The cinematography is great. The music's great. The actors are great. I mean, what else can we say?
Yeah, I mean, even a lot of the things from this movie that the author hated, I think work really well in this movie. I remember the one thing I really remember about the book, and I remember hating it so much, is that it wasn't called Fantasia. It was like Fantastica or Fantastico or something. And I hated
Fantasyland.
that because I obviously watched the movie first.
Sure.
So I was like, no, it's Fantasia.
Fantasia.
So I think that, I think that this movie is extremely special. I think that anybody can watch it today and really enjoy it, whether you're young or old. I think you can get a lot out of this.
I agree. Our audience agrees.
Yeah, even with its faults, I think it's great.
The fact that Roman and Ina, who are adults, but they're only in their 30s, and they didn't see it as a kid, and English is their second language, and they enjoyed it, proves I think it's a great movie.
Yeah.
Ian, what's your final word?
I think that this movie was. I'm going to stop short of calling it a masterpiece, but there were masterful parts of it.
I agree.
The cinematography was fantastic. The acting was great. The puppetry, all the visual effects. I mean, Guillermo del Toro had to have seen this movie about a billion
good point.
times.
Yeah.
There's just so much that this movie offers, and so much that comes from this movie in other films that come later. We all owe a Wolfgang Petersen a drink.
I'm with you on that. Okay, Ryan, you have the last word. What do you think?
Yeah, to add to what Ian said, it's not just another movie that we saw as a kid. I'm a videophile. I love it. I love watching on the biggest screen with the loudest speakers. And I think right now, personally, I'm going through a phase right now where there's a lot of modern films that just aren't doing it for me, even at the movie theaters.
Yeah.
So I'm going back and I'm digging through my 80s collection right now. I'm going back through a phase right now, I think, through 80s films, because this is a perfect example. It just strikes that chord. And again, it's not just I remember watching this as a kid. This is why we watch movies like this. Like the kid's reading the book and falls into it. Like I'm watching the movie falling into that as well. It takes you somewhere. And it's the magic of watching movies. Yeah.
Not all
And-
movies are art. This was art.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm not going to argue with that. And guess what? Every Wednesday at Meteor, we watch art.
Most of the time.
Most of the time. 50% of
Most
the
of the
time.
time.
Some of the time, 25. Okay. Not all the time.
We don't always review art.
Yeah. But we usually watch art.
Yeah.
Yeah. But if you want to review art, do not watch our podcast. Laser Brains or Tape Crusaders, even worse. But be sure to come out to Meteor every Wednesday for movie night. And Josh, where can you find our episodes?
You can find all of our stuff over on our website at thecomicbooksyndicate.com. You can also find all of our video format versions on our YouTube channel, so check us out there.
And we want to thank Champion for hosting movie
Anytime.
night every week at
Anytime.
Meteor. Woo!
Thanks for
And we
coming
want
out.
to thank Ryan for joining us. You're welcome
Yeah.
to join us another time in the near future when we do an 80s movie. Maybe you
100%.
can throw a suggestion our way.
I threw a couple to Ian today, but
I forget them already.
Just send us a private message. We can't reveal it to our audience.
I've got a list, man. I'm not going to tell you how to do this, but I've got a list.
All right,
because you
we're
guys are
on
doing
it.
well.
We're
You guys
on
are
the
doing well.
list. We're going to look at that list. Okay, and until the next time, see you later.